Joe Camilleri, the Quintessential Black Sorrows is what we're here to talk about. Good to see you, Joe.
You too. You look great.
Well, you're looking pretty good yourself. And just for the record, so everyone knows, it's bright and early in the morning, 9:30 in the morning. Very un-rock and roll for both of us, Joe.
I think so, though. You know, there's not much on TV anymore, so you see a lot of rock and rollers at really bright and early, don't you? Sort of doing their wares. But look, you know, I live in the country and I've got things to do, and the wind was heavy yesterday, and it's blown down a few of my trees, so I've got to sort that out in the next couple of hours.
Yeah.
And then carry on with the business of music.
The business of music, but, you know, being the country farmer, get out and milk the cows first thing in the morning. That's what you do these days.
Nothing like it, really.
Let's talk about the album. It starts off, and I'm not going to do this in track order. I'm going to do it in album order with Sonola 1984, Brown Eyed Girl, and What a Difference a Day Makes. Tell me about the choice of how you came about selecting the songs for this, and we'll start with those two.
If I just take it back a little bit, the album's about the footprint of every musician that I could put on the album. And I wanted, you know, because there's lots of nuts and bolts and lots of moving parts for anything that goes ahead, you know. And so this band's 40 years old, probably had about 30 or 40 people in it. And I wanted to respect that and celebrate that part of it. So with the first album, it was by accident. The guy, Chris, who was running a cafe, wanted to make an album. He said, why don't we go and make an album? And we went into the cafe now, went into the AAV, had 6 hours, made an album, which turned out to be Sonola. First track was Brown Eyed Girl. Last track was What a Difference a Day Makes. And I've always been a fan of What a Difference a Day Makes. I mean, there must be, I don't know, 1,000 cover versions of that song. I don't know how many, but, you know, it's just such a popular song. And I heard Lonnie Johnson make a record with that on it, and I always liked his version. So I kind of just stepped over that and took a little bit of that and added whatever we had. We had George Petromoulos playing piano accordion at the time. It was kind of like a little zydeco band. And the first track was Brown Eyed Girl. And it was before Brown Eyed Girl was really popular. It was on the Bang series, you know, as you know. And Wayne Burt brought that track into the studio. We just kind of spun it a couple of times and then just did our version, which was pretty close to his, and that was kind of how that came about. Everything on that album was 1 or 2 takes, and there was very little overdubs because we were the guinea pigs for the console. You know, it's kind of crazy, you know, get a band to sort of work out all the bugs out of the console. So and then that sort of turned into what it is today, really.
So when you talk about being true to the footprint of the band and recognizing everybody was in the band, because we do skip over quite a few albums as we go through. Like we start with Sonola, next is Dear Children, which means Rock and Zydeco and A Place in the World don't get a mention here, but we're straight into Dear Children, Daughters of Glory, and City of Soul.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing with that, you know, like Rock and Zydeco was recorded exactly the same way as Sonola. But for me, there was maybe the Johnny Restivo song was the best thing on it. And it just didn't work for same band, same attitude, same budget, which was nothing. All these things were the same, but it just didn't work. And I felt that I could let that one fly. With A Place in the World, for me, I should have put Country Girls on it, but we recorded that record in a kitchen at Dave Herzog's studio, which is when you remember those, were they ADATs, those things that were
Oh, yeah,
eight-track
yeah, yeah.
recording machines? He had 3 of those, right? And they'd never join up. It's just kind of, you spend all day in this, his studio was this little kitchen. So if you weren't making coffee, you're singing in there. And, but it was an interesting, this is where me and Nick started writing songs. So probably should have put Country Girls on it because it was a really good song. And it was the beginning of the making of me and Nick working together for 40 years. But somehow, I did, you got to remember that all this stuff was put together in January of this year. Now, if I waited a couple of weeks, 8 of those songs might have been different anyway. So it was kind of a choice I decided to make, not only from an album perspective and try to get as many things as I can from everything, but also from a sonic perspective. I felt that it just didn't sound as good as some of the other records, and I think I might have made a mistake on that. But we ended up, and then we started recording in a proper studio. I decided that I'm going to have a go, and I owned a house that I was living in. When I say owned it, I half owned it with the bank, and I could borrow some money then. I was young enough to borrow some money, even though I didn't have a job. Go figure that. And I wanted to make a record. Studio's very expensive then, reels of tape were $300 a reel. So it was kind of difficult to make. But the songs that me and Nick were writing were it seemed like we were going somewhere that was good. It was a good place to go. And we come up with Daughters of Glory and made an album which ended up being Dear Children. Still sort of an independent record. These first 4 records were independent. Dear Children was treated exactly the same way as the other 3. No budget, just a couple of sandwiches, and tried to get them to people like you, and make records and write little notes on them, but the oddball game was there that it started being played on. Now we've got FM radio stations, so Eon FM are playing. They're playing Mystified. Right, they're playing Mystified, and this is how the story went, and Daughters of Glory and the track Dear Children. We've changed by now. George is gone. We've got an organ player, wild organ player, and excuse me, and we're becoming a little bit more rocky. But we have 3 tuba players, and that changed everything within itself. I think you can only use 3 tubas once. But, there used to be a lot of record pluggers in those days. And the record companies have record pluggers, and they'll go from state to state and try to get their wares on the radio. And radio was playing really good stuff, and they were playing album stuff, and they were looking for things that weren't necessarily what was on the pop charts. And he made some reference to the fact, why are you playing this record that you can't buy? You can only buy it out of a couple of shops. And their response was, I wish was the same today. They liked the song, and they played the song because they liked the song.
Yeah, we don't have that with radio anymore. And for people who are younger watching this, I mean, Eon FM and Melbourne and Triple M in Sydney at that time were more like what you know as community radio now.
Pretty much, and they'd play a whole album, and they get stiffs like me to go and say, and they'd have 3 guys or 3 gals or and they put Little River Band on, you have to listen to the whole album, then have to critique it, you know. And it was just, man, I was kind of, that was a hole I shouldn't have went into.
Yeah.
But they would do things like that. They'd have these forums and they'd have all these interesting things that were valuable. And you talk about tracks and you talk about the making of these songs and how progressive it's becoming and how the sonic component was very important then. You know, you'd go to those shops and they'd have, you know, $1,000 amplifiers just when they put the needle on the groove, you know, all of a sudden it just blow up into something you just want to. And they would do that with American and English records, you know, that have, you know, some, you know, Pink Floyd or something like that. And they'd say, listen to the sonics of this record. And you know, I guess there was something to do. You know, you had a lot of time on your hands. You could do stuff. And they liked the record. And then I got a deal. Well, I got a call saying that they wanted to take over the Dear Children album. And, you know, and I said to Nick, this is an opportunity that, you know, that might come our way just this once. You know, this is the last record we were going to make.
Well, the last record you made as an indie act at that time, because then
at that time,
Hold On to Me, Harley and Rose, off you became the big rock star for many, many years from that.
Settle down, mate. What actually happened was, you know, I was able to. My house was worth $67,000, and I borrowed $30,000 to make the record, right? And so, you know, I was under pressure to get the 30 grand back in a way, you know. We had made 1,000 records, and there's nothing like disappointment when 900 of the 1,000 are still in the boot of your car.
Oh, I've heard that story from a lot of people.
Yeah, I know, but it's true, and it feels weird, and then we did this really good thing. Because, you know, always looking at trying to find something to do we did these 2 billboards because the Dear Children album was a beautiful picture of the boy holding a watermelon. It was just a gorgeous photo from the 40s, I think, you know, that we kind of somehow adapted and got screen printed, and it was good. And we're playing it. We had this residence in Albert Park or Middle Park Hotel, and that was going pretty well. You know, you felt like a rock star in it because it could only hold 250 people, and there was always 350 people in there, and you kind of felt like the joint was jumping. But these billboards, we had 2 of these billboards. One was in front of the Middle Park Hotel, and one was in Punt Road. And you know, me being the entrepreneur that I am, thinking people are going to see that and they're going to buy it. You know, they're going to buy this record. But it did very well. And of course, I get the call. We do the deal, and they give us an opportunity to make the record that sort of became us, really, which was the Hold On to Me album, which was a great record, and I had conditions. So I had conditions. They weren't allowed to come in. There was no briefcase rock. They weren't allowed to come in until the end, right? And we spent. I think they gave us 80 grand, and we spent every penny. Every cent, you know, like there was no. I think the only joy that we ever got, we were recording at Sing Sing, and Sing Sing was just a little studio then. It was kind of a big room, but a little studio, and they were doing all the renovations themselves. We were working around the renovations, and the only joy we ever had is that when we were able to say, it's dinner time. We might be able to spend $100 on food, and we'd all just sit around the dining table eating spaghetti and thinking that we're I don't know, something was happening anyway. Something really nice was happening, and it was a feeling of being in a band, like the Falcons. There was a one for all scenario. This is before. This is before the ending of the record. This is just, Peter and me and Jeff and Nick and James. James would come and do the midnight shift, and I would sit with him. We had two engineers. I wanted to make a double album, so we had two engineers, and James was with Mondo Rock, and he'd come in and start playing, and I'd be asleep with my legs up on the desk, and he'd finish his take. I remember him doing The Chosen Ones, and the engineer says, "I think he's asleep," right? And I said, "No, I'm not. No. Let's do it one more time." So let's do it one more time. And that's how it played out. It was just kind of, it was a joy to be in there. There was music being made. There were people that you liked to hang with, and I think, regardless of how I think the record sounds like to me today is irrelevant. I just remember the joy of making that record.
Mm. But even though, the Sony years and the $80,000, it sounds like a lot of money. It actually was a lot of money back then, but it bought Hold On to Me, Chain to the Wheel, Chosen Ones, The Crack Up, Harley and Rose, Never Let Me Go, which were representative on this record.
Things changed, all of a sudden you weren't doing those gigs. You were doing different gigs all of a sudden, and people were interested in these songs that you would only just kind of, a little bit like the Falcons. I didn't know that the Falcons were popular. I mean, I knew they were popular. I saw people and they were dancing, having fun, but I didn't think that Hit and Run was, well, don't do it today. I don't care. We're having fun, aren't we? And then,
but surely you're on Countdown. Everybody in Australia knew who you were. You couldn't walk down the street in any city in Australia and not get recognised. Then
I'm not the smartest guy around. I just I thought, because I thought we were just an art band, just an art band, just playing. Happen to have something that's on the radio. It'll be over soon. The temperature will rise and the temperature will fall. And I kind of had the same feeling in the Sorrows. We always had fans and people would, but I never thought it was kind of, I didn't get the feeling until all of a sudden we're playing and people are starting to sing the songs. That there's that wonderful feeling when everybody knows every friggin' word. All of a sudden you get this powerful, it's so powerful that you say, wow, I hope this never ends, because it's intoxicating. So yes, all those songs, the Hold On To Me record was in the charts for well over a year, I think, and it yielded 6 tracks, 6 singles, which was a lot. But I think part of the success of a lot of bands in that period of time was the record companies. Once they found a way of having one hit on an album, they're going to try to make the record spend as much time in the charts as they can.
Rinse and repeat, the record companies rule.
Well, and it was TV, really. The people were promoting, record companies were promoting records on TV. And they said, well, I like that song and I like that song. Well, I might buy the album. And all of a sudden, I think Hold On To Me got to gold. We were in Sydney and we were presented a gold record. 6 weeks later, we were presented a double platinum album for the same record. A month later, we had a triple platinum record of the same album. You know, Hold On To Me went triple platinum. Then I think it got to the next level, so 4 platinums. Whatever that means. And
it means 3 people to invite to dinner and use it as the plates.
Yeah. I don't have those records. I foolishly gave everything away. The only album that I keep that from a gold perspective is the Dear Children record.
Oh, wow.
I have that. The other ones I don't sort of, I've given them away, family members and people that might be interested in them. But that Dear Children record went gold, and I thought, because the struggle behind it all kind of still has value to me. But look, it's and you think it's never going to end. All of a sudden, you got the Harley and Rose record does just as well, if not better, and you get we start winning kind of dumb awards. And start winning, or the record becomes, country song of the year or song of the year or whatever it is, and all of a sudden these things happen. And I think every band loses focus, because all of a sudden all these other things come into play that has nothing to do with the people that are involved in what you're doing. So it's kind of strange, Paul, and you're starting to second guess what you should be doing, and you don't realise that the musical landscape is changing faster than you're writing songs.
Well, you get to the last 10 years, which are also represented here, Certified Blue, Endless Sleep, Chapter 47, Faithful Satellite, Citizen John, St George's Road, 2021. This is some of your most creative work. You've been very prolific and very creative at the same time in the last decade.
Well, I think it's I think me and Nick want to do it, and we want to. It's all about us on that level, because you can be you can stop and just kind of the way the world runs now. It runs a lot more into the nostalgic component more than anything else for a certain kind of bands, and we certainly had enough firepower to not do anything. But I was really keen to sort of say, and I would always talk to Nick and say, "You want to go around the dance floor one more time? Shall we dance? What do you think?" And as the years roll on, we talk more. We write a lot, but we talk more till the moment that we have to leave each other, and then we hand each other what we need to hand each other. So it's still a beautiful feeling, and and I love him dearly, and I don't think the band would be the band without Nick. Nick is the driving wheel. I'm the guy that can put all the parts together, and I'm the guy that instigates the stuff. He's a subterranean geezer, So I'm the morning melody guy. He sees things in a hard way, and we try to feather each other. And nothing's sacred, I might have spoken to you about this before, Paul. Nothing's sacred between us, and so it's a nice relationship to have. And I think the last 10 years have been the best 10 years as far as kind of writing songs, but it's been the hardest 10 years about trying to place the band somewhere, and not to be there's nothing wrong with being a heritage act, but it's, it's, I think we're more than that, and of course, if you have hits, you've got to have nostalgic component, and you've got to have people that have stopped listening to you and moved on from that, and that's their marker, and they're happy to hear that, and I've pushed really hard to, from a live perspective, is to sort of make it so it becomes one big thing. It's not only about the songs that you might have liked. There are some things here that you might find, like you do when we used to buy a record, and you all of a sudden track 4 sounds really interesting, and track 9 is the making of the band or something like that, whatever that is. I know it's very romantic and foolish of me, but that's kind of how it feels for me.
Well, I think I saw somebody, I can't remember who the quote came from. You don't stop playing music because you get old because you stop playing music.
Well, it's true. It's true. Every bone in my body aches. But, yet when I've spoken to Leo about this, Leo Sayer, and he's similar. We're the same age. We share the same birthday, but and we feel like we used to feel until we finished the show, and then about an hour later, so every bone in your body is kind of, you're falling apart, but you just want to do it. You've got to push through all those things. There's no, I always feel kind of weird when people say they're retiring. That might mean a whole bunch of different things. Because the thing that gave them so much joy is the thing that still will give you joy, I still like picking up something and playing it. I still like learning something. I still like trying to figure out this kind of giant puzzle. There's so much to learn, and I'm running out of time. I don't have much time, and I want the next record to be the best record, where I can then ask. Then when you ask me, got a new record out, Joe? So this has got 15 Maseratis on it, mate, and a couple of, This is a killer.
Well, there's been a few Maseratis over the last 10 years, I can tell you.
Yeah, well, it's, and I think you need to sort of, they don't come. They just, you got to create them. The ideas are there. And the nice thing about getting old is, you hear this all the time, the simplicity of it all becomes really important. You want to cut through the crap, and writing songs is kind of can be easier doing that, but you still have to have it it still has to be in a certain kind of way, and it still has to be that meaning, and it's still got to be soulful, and it's not just the words, it's the feeling, it's the music that feathers the lyric,
Mm. Well, the Quintessential Black Sorrows, that's the one that's out now. And based on what we've been talking here and the albums that we've been skipping over, including a 15-year gap from 1998 to 2014, there should be a Quintessential Part 2 coming sometime in the future, I would imagine.
Well, one can hope. I mean, I was busy during that period of time, there's...
Well, yeah, you had Roaring Town, 4 Days in Sing Sing, Crooked Little Thoughts, Certified Blue. They were all in that era.
They're all part of it, weren't they? But look, I'm hoping the best you can hope for is people might just think that it's interesting enough, and to, just to put the needle on the groove and just kind of find something in all the things in the 21 songs, and get a sense of, it is a great band, and it's a great bunch of people, and we've made some really. We contribute to the Australian tapestry of music, and I think that's valuable.
Just a snapshot alone of 41 years. It's worth it just for that. Yeah. Joe, good to see you.
You too, mate. You too.